I'm going to tell you about the project that we're going to work on together.
Okay.
First of all, as you know, I've been working on it for a long time, literally decades.
Yep.
And so the company is named Infinite to Elevate because I'm Nate. And so it's Infinite to Elevate, more or less meaning if you want to have a happy life, you got to involve yourself in the process of infination, which is being involved in the games, mostly.
Right, you got to play this game if you want to be happy.
Exactly, or play this series of games if you want to be happy. So, the part that we're talking about particularly is the Hallux Rigidus Saga, which is, it's not the only thing that I've got as far as games, but it's the #1 project. It's the one I've really been focusing on more than anything. So, Hallux Rigidus, you played the game Hallux Rigidus Saga, right?
Yeah.
So you know the general idea of it. Ultimately, I'll just recap on that so you know. It's just a game where you play one of 6 characters and you go to this town and you solve a mystery of these horrifying abominations coming into the town. Nobody knows where from, but we're assuming it's some sort of gate location from the netherworld.
Yeah.
And so your job is to find evidence of what's going on, like who might have opened this gate, and to shut it down. And so it's kind of a process of elimination, like Clue, where you're trying to find a place and a person.
Right.
Which you do eventually. You know, the kicker on that one is one of the 6 people doing the investigation is the bad guy, the guy that's actually opened this gate, or at least is keeping it open.
So one of the players.
Yeah, the players. One of the players is the guy that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So he's helping you search. He doesn't know he's the bad guy at first, because he's also searching.
Wow.
But eventually you can find out through the process of elimination who it is, and it could be you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had games where I never knew until the very end, and somebody else revealed it, and I'm like, whoa, I'm the bad guy, and then I have to face off to all the other players, and I may or may not be ready for that.
Kind of like the way Clark Kent realizes he's Superman after a while.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of like that, exactly. You know, sometimes you find out early on, and then you try to build up your character before somebody else reveals you. But revealing yourself gives you a bonus, or if they reveal you, they get the bonus. So even though you find out you're the bad guy and you want to win the game, and you know you can just reveal it right away for this little bonus. But if your character has hardly got any levels and some other people are really rocking it, you might be like, hey, I might want to try to get a few levels before I try to face this guy. Even with the chance that somebody else will reveal it, might be better to get a level or two. But in the game, it's hard to.
Now, what do you mean by levels?
Well, you've played Hallux Rigidus.
I know, but we're explaining it, right?
Okay, so the levels are when you face an abomination successfully, then you get experience, and with a certain amount of experience, it's not much, you go up a level, which makes you more resistant to facing those abominations in the future.
Gotcha.
So I'll point out real quick, in facing an abomination, it's not like you're fighting an abomination, you're not battling it. You're battling your own willpower to realize that such a thing can exist. It's so hideous and horrifying, or so ridiculous, you know, in your mind, your mind says that can't exist.
Right.
And so you're overcoming your willpower to realize, okay, this can exist in my world.
Yeah, and then if you fail in that, then you go insane.
Well, you lose sanity, usually quite a good amount of sanity. And once you lose all of your sanity, you get, I think, 50 max, and once you lose it all, then you go insane. And you go to the asylum, and you get your sanity back, and then you go back out into the world, continuing your search and continuing to lose sanity.
Yeah.
And once you've gone insane, you get a phobia that helps you lose sanity faster. So you can go insane even more fast.
Yeah, oh boy.
Ultimately.
And then by the time you're done playing the game, you're really insane.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you happy.
Exactly. If you don't know how to be sad, you're too insane. Yeah, insane people are. They don't know.
Yeah.
They're happy because they're too insane to realize that there might be some sadness in their life. So that's the premise, though. That's the first game that was developed Now I'll tell you how the storyline that I developed to it actually came into play.
Okay.
I took the game and a few others that I did to conventions, gaming conventions all over the country. And most people liked it. There were a few issues that have been fixed since, but there were some issues that people talked about. But mostly, the one thing that I noticed is there was a lot of other gaming companies there.
Uh-huh.
And they're all promoting their games. But the thing I noticed that was interesting was they were promoting their newest game, and some of their older games were totally forgotten.
Yeah.
So the newest game came out, and it's a new game. So of course they've got these other games, and some might be somewhat popular still, but they don't mention those other games. They mention the new game that they're promoting.
Mm-hmm.
And so there they are promoting this new game, and all the other games are like, well, we still get some sales from them, but we need something new. And that bothered me, because I was like, you get a game and you really like it, and then you get a new game and you promote it, and the other game you're still getting some sales on, that's great, but now you got something new to really spruce up people's interest and stuff. And so I said, no, I don't want to do that. That's not the way I want things to go.
Yeah.
So I thought about it. I said, what can I do to make it so all of my games are always popular?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, Hallux Rigidus is a very in-depth story in itself, that game. So I said, let's elaborate on that game, and let's put all the other games as events and things within that storyline. So now I've got a storyline that starts from, I believe, 1904, and expands 5,000 years into the future. And all of these games fit as various events within this timeline. Some of them are actual events that take place in the town of Hallux Rigidus, like Trinity's Challenge. That's a game based on the girls' prep school in the town of Hallux Rigidus. So it's actually a place in the game that is also its own game. And it actually depicts what's actually happening in that space of the game. And there's an event card that talks about what's going on in that space. So you got a teeny little one-paragraph intro of what's actually happening in that space, and then we create a whole nother game that elaborates a lot on that little teeny paragraph. So it actually creates a world within a world, in a sense. Plus you have games that are parallel, run down this line. And so the way I have it right now is you have, or in this case, since you're partnering with me on it, we have Hallux Rigidus, which will be the flagship game that starts the whole storyline. Within that, right now we have, it's the first Chronicle, and right now we have, I think, Thunder Bridge, and that one actually doesn't take place in town. It's actually a prequel situation that links the original event in 1904 with the current event taking place that we actually introduced into the game. It takes place in 1942, and that's Hallux Rigidus. And that's the first game that's part of the whole thing. But there was another event that took place in 1904, and I plan on doing a pre-sequel on that game after the whole thing's done. And those that are fans of the thing and are wondering, what happened in 1904? It's not mentioned in anything here, except in snippets. And then we're talking about it now, so they see this video, they'll say, so they might be curious, what exactly went on. And so we'll have something we could release later.
Yes, you can expand in both directions.
Yes. So in order to do this, I knew we had to, number one, not just have games that are events and games that run the storyline, but it had to be interactive as a board game and a card game. So to do that, you have Hallux Rigidus. Hallux Rigidus consists of 18 event cards, 18 possession cards, 18 abomination cards, you got skill cards. So they're designed in a way that you take the Hallux Rigidus, and I got a second generation called Hallux City. An event takes place in 1969 in Hallux City. So Hallux Rigidus is this nice little town, and this event happens, and it drives a lot of people insane, and weird things happen. But one thing's settled. The mayor of the town thinks that maybe this happened in their exclusive place, because there's this little podunk town, So he's thinking he might actually fix it from happening again by creating a bustling city. So he builds a racetrack close by that'll bring in a lot of tourists for that sort of thing. He likes racing, and so he builds a racetrack, and that's Jeremy's Raceway, which is another game that's not in the city, but it's created between games. It's considered the last game in the first Chronicle, because it was the last game made before the next Chronicle starts, which is the bridge between the two. So you have Hallux Rigidus, and then you have Hallux City. In Hallux Rigidus, on the board, you see actually construction sites. They're considered blank spaces in the game, but you can see a subtle shade of some construction sites. Well, that's because the town is, in a sense, being built up for the city. So in the cityscape one, there's no empty spaces, all buildings, just a whole huge metropolis in a sense. And so it's a little more elaborate game. There's more evidence that you have to find, so that the game takes longer. It also appeals to the hobby stylist type gamers that want games to be a little bit longer. They don't want the family size game, they want a big hobby game. And so it creates that for them. It also makes it so that all the cards can be intermixed. So you choose what city you're playing and you can add both cards. So they have different borders, so you can easily pull them apart for the different games, or you can put them together and all the backs are the same. So when they're laying down, you don't know anything. I've already test played doing this. I test played the phobias within using them in either game, and it works fine. In possessions, either game, and it works fine. So it's all designed to be completely intermixable. And then you have New Hallux. And what happens there is that the city is hit by an abomination attack again in 1969, and it's devastated, bad. A big city was a bad idea in this situation, and it just devastates the city. A lot of people leave, some people die, some people go insane permanently, and it ends up being just this little village, and they call it New Hallux. Well, all the cards are intermixable with that too. So all the cards, you can have all cards together. Instead of an 18-card deck, you can have a 36-card deck with the two, or a 54-card deck, and more abominations, more events, and stuff like that.
Sounds great.
And
I haven't played that one yet.
The second one's in development, and the third one, because of all the changes to make the game playable and fix things along the way, it's way off track. I can pull it back, but it's going to take some time before that one's ready. A lot of the peripheral games within those Chronicles will be ready long before some of these games.
So a question I have is this original? The idea of the games, multiple games within a game, and expansive universe in a board game.
I don't know if it's original, but I've done a bit of research. There are some people who've done similar things, but I've never seen anything exactly like it. There are some people that actually wrote a series of books, and they had made games within those series of books. So you read the first book, and then there's a game that's, and so on and so forth. So as far as what I'm doing, though, I mean, there's games that the game itself is kind of a story. But I don't know of anywhere I have a long, expansive universe that goes on and on for years and years that has multiple chronicles, and they all have various games. But we also have, like, Thunder Bridge and the Encounter. The Encounter, you're in an old estate or a mansion, and you find a zombie, and the zombie comes after you. And you go through you escape through the building and then the grounds, and then at the end it says, you made it. But then there's a little snippet that says, but in order to escape, you have to really escape across Thunder Bridge. So you have to have there's a follow-up game for the Encounter to continue through in Thunder Bridge. So you have two games that kind of match together. And then we have games hidden within games, because Jeremy's Raceway has Xanther and Pox hidden inside of it. So you actually pull certain cards out and apply a set of rules to those, and it creates a whole other game.
And what do you mean? And when you say hidden, what does that imply?
Well, you have the racing deck. So with Jeremy's Raceway, you're running on a track. You roll the dice to move, but then you also draw a racing card and do what that card says. Well, in that deck of racing cards, you pull out a certain number of those. A certain a certain set of those, it creates a whole nother game.
Oh. And do you then continue by playing that whole other game, or do you?
No, currently the other game has no relation to the series at all. It's just a cute little additive.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just to make it fun that there's something hidden in your game.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And Jeremy's Raceway has an expansion that's currently when Jeremy's Raceway is created, it's just a regular raceway. It's not part of any event that took place. You know, it's created on purpose to get people's mind away from the event that took place.
Oh, yeah.
And move them on. But in 1969, when the event happens, some of the racers start having psychic issues and abilities and stuff. And so we have a deck of cards that's included if you want to play it during the event time. Jeremy's Raceway, during the event of 1969, you would add these particular cards to it. It adds like psychic attack cards and things like that.
Yep.
Just kind of throw some monkey wrenches into the whole thing. And then there's also the, recently we added Jeremy's Demolition Derby. So we just have at the bottom of the rules of Jeremy's Raceway, there's a one-page description of how you can convert it from Jeremy's Raceway to Jeremy's Demolition Derby.
Cool. Nice.
So you have multiple games. Those ones aren't hidden.
Yeah.
One's an expansion and one's just an alternative gameplay.
Right.
But you use the same components and everything.
Yep.
And then you have, right now we have 5 games in the first Chronicle that are all ready to go. And you have, I think we've only got 1 game in the second Chronicle that's ready to go, that's in print, ready to go.
What's that one?
That is King Flamingo.
Oh, yep.
And I don't even think the other ones are just ideas at the time. And then we have New Hallux, which is also just an idea, and some of the peripherals are ideas, but I've changed up my view on how I wanted to do those anyway, so I'm glad I don't have any games developed for those. I've got some ideas, but no real development. And that is the idea of taking the actual spaces in the game and turning them into their own individual games. Trinity's Challenge was done to test that theory, and it worked really well. And because of that, I want to do more of that. I want to take those buildings within the town, especially the ones that have events for them as cards in the game, and actually develop those into its own game.
Yeah.
Giving our players, our audience, more elaborate definition of what actually is going on.
Yeah,
in these
that's really cool, and it sounds almost limitless.
It actually is limitless.
You could just never stop.
It is limitless, and we will probably never stop.
Yeah,
you know, that's the beauty of it. And you get more games. I do have plans for a more elaborate game where I actually have 2, maybe 3 games that are separate games that can be combined into a single game. Now, it's not hard to do. I was playing a couple games with some friends. I don't remember what it's called. I think one's called Babel, but I'm not sure. And it is a pretty elaborate game about building the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And it has, I believe it has like material components you got to build up to build it up and stuff. But there's a lot of aspects to the game. You could do this for points, or you could do this for points, and totally ignore what the other one is and do this for points. So there's 3 or 4 different ways you can actually build points to win the game. You don't have to do any of the others. You can do some of them and some of them and some of them.
Yeah.
Or you can do just this and nothing else and focus on nothing else.
Right.
And so I thought, I liked the idea. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 games that are individual, but then you put them together for a single goal.
Yeah.
You know, they're all working for that single goal. And they're all set up to be individual games.
Yeah.
But with the possibility of there being an individual goal. And so then you can say, this game, this game, this game, this game, which are designed in that particular way, but feel like an independent game. Now you give it a different goal, and those games are set up to work together to make that goal.
Yeah,
and then you've got, you know, more and more.
Yeah. And this just keeps expanding and expanding until your mind is blown and you go insane.
Well, that's the whole premise. The whole premise is going insane. Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. So here's I'll tell you the storyline real quick so that you get that. Okay, so we're gonna leave the whole projects alone. We're gonna just delve into the quick storyline of the whole thing. So ultimately, I can tell you fast, so we can do it. We'll do more elaborate later for our audience if they choose, they want to hear more about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly, first of all, what happens is these abominations are coming into the world through this gate, and they're wreaking havoc upon the citizens. What they actually do is they have they have a psychic ability that's so strong that they actually radiate the psychic ability like a radiation. So when they're here interacting with us, they're not hurting us. They're doing something, searching for something perhaps. Nobody knows for sure because we're all going insane. So they're actually infecting us with this psychic radiation, and so we're starting to develop psychic abilities. We don't know how to deal with psychic abilities, so we're going insane, or we're hurting people and not realizing it, or we're hurting people and we are realizing it, but don't know why. And so all this crazy stuff's going on everywhere, all through town. At first it's subtle places, but it expands until the whole town is just totally wrought with this stuff. Now this is the town of Hallux in 1904.
Okay.
So what happens there is they decide they have to abandon the town. Some people are stuck in the asylum, and there's a psychiatrist there that offers to stay behind and take care of those that are insane. He's got a few staff members that stay with him, but everybody else hightails it south. This is done in Coos County, New Hampshire is where it's based, which is right just south of the Canadian border in New Hampshire.
Oh. Right where there are a lot of crazy people.
Exactly. So they run south. They don't get far. They get about 8 miles. It's dead winter when they go, and winters in Maine and New Hampshire like pretty darn cold. And so they get about 8 miles is all, but there's this huge forest that they're kind of weaving through to get there, and theoretically anyway, the guy named, I can't remember his name, his name's Edward, he's the psychologist. He's also psychically endowed naturally. And so he uses his abilities to kind of squeeze the trees, if you will, once people are through, to make them a little more dense and difficult for anything to get out. More or less trapping the denizens of these gate travelers within the town of Hallux so they don't follow people.
Okay. Yeah.
So these people go about 8 miles is all. Well, I think it's about 8 miles. And they develop a new town. They call it Hallux Rigidus. And the reason they call it that is because Hallux is it's a medical term for a big toe. It was actually somebody's last name, which is why the town was named after it, but it is a medical term for big toe. And so they think it's kind of silly, and they named the new town Hallux Rigidus because some of them get a mild frostbite on the way there, which Hallux Rigidus is a stiff big toe.
Yeah.
So they named the town Hallux Rigidus, which is a literal medical term for a stiff big toe or arthritic big toe or whatever. So, so they developed this new town, and another incident happens there in 1942 in that town. So then they develop it into a city, thinking the reason it's happening is because they're just this little podunk town, and if they get more people there and it's a bigger place, they won't be targeted anymore. But they are targeted again in 1969 when they're a bustling city. And it devastates the place because you got tons more people going insane and tons more incidences going on. So it just wreaks havoc. And so it dwindles down into a little teeny village. In fact, the mayor at the end of the event in 1969, he's run out of town, which is sad because his grandfather and his father and him were all the mayors of the towns, and they were all liked, and that's why they were reelected as mayors, 3 generations. But the idea of making the place a big town was his idea, and people really rake him over the holes, they rake him over the coals about it, and so they finally just run him out of town. He can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
He loves the place, but he's really railroaded bad for being the one to make such a decision. So now it's just this little teeny village, and there's an event that takes place there in 2003. And not much happens because it's a little teeny village. I mean, they're devastated like before, but a lot of them are kind of used to it. And so although you do have people going insane and things, it's a small incident and people don't hear much about it outside of the area. However, at that point in time, it's been happening and people have been leaving town, not just going insane and dying, but some people are like escaping, going into the world and taking their psychic energies with them that are still emanating from them. And so the rest of the world is starting to slowly
get infected.
Ooh,
pandemic time.
Yeah, and so you have people that are evolving psychically. Some of them are handling it okay and some not so. But since it's in small pockets as people leave, and it's more subtle because it's not as strong as the actual emanation from the abominations themselves.
Right.
Then it's actually just slowly developing the human race into a very psychically, evolving situation and stuff.
Yeah.
So it kind of alters our timeline in a sense that way, or alters our reality from how we are going from who we are today, from our past, and now we're kind of developing into the psychically endowed race of humans instead. So, in 2059, now just so you know, on the sideline here, some people knew that there was going to be an issue. They know that they realize that there's one event taking place every couple of generations, but they're suspecting that at some point in time, there's going to be more than one event take place at the same time.
Yeah.
And they're trying to prepare for it. So they actually create spaceships in secret to escape if they think they need to in the future. And it's interesting because they're not using rocket propulsions to do it. They're using psychic abilities to do it. So they're creating spaceships and lifting them into space with telekinetic abilities.
Wow.
And then they go up there and they're expanding on those spaceships, and bringing more up and then expanding on them. So they'll come down and get materials and work and then bring those materials up and expand on those ships and also make more ships. So they've got like a fleet of ships.
Yeah.
In 2059, their fears happen and suddenly gates open up all over the world. Tons of them everywhere. Abominations are flowing in all over the world. So there is a game that's developed. It's actually not, it's not finished. I'm going to say it's maybe about 50% built enough for test play. When you're making a game, 90% of actually making a game is test play.
Yeah.
So in saying this, it's saying that we're close to test play, but far from actually being printable.
Yeah.
Because you got to do a lot of test play in order to get to that point. But in we're actually tied in at 2059, more or less the year that people left the Earth.
Cool. So, what was I going to say? Test play is something that people have an opportunity to participate in?
Well, I'm hoping so. It's one of the things that as we're developing more and more games, I myself am developing quite a few games, and I'm getting local people to test play. There's a lot more games, and not just within Hallux Rigidus Saga, but we got the basketball game that you and I just played.
Yeah.
I've been trying to bridge the gap between sports and geeks.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to do it for years, and I didn't know how, but I just kind of had a vision, if you will, of how to create the basketball game.
Yeah, it was
fun.
I
slapped it together quick based on what I saw in my vision. And then we test played it a few times already, and
that was good.
And it's turning out really good.
Real good, yeah.
It's got more to go, but ultimately, when you play it, if you're like a basketball lover and you watch it all the time, or you play it all the time, or both, and you play this, you might say, "Holy cow, this sucks." But for somebody that knows about basketball and has seen games now and again, it feels like you're playing basketball.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody that really gets into basketball, so...
I used to get into it quite a bit. I never really played on a team, but I used to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm too old now, so the card game's perfect.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. It's good for old people that can't play anymore, but would really like to. And it's good for people that might want to learn about basketball a little bit more, but they're not heavily interested, but they want to know. They might have a friend that really is into it, and they hang out sometimes, and they talk about basketball because the friend likes it, and they're like, but I'm not really interested myself. But then you got the card game, because the card game itself can be really fun for the people that are not so interested, and still pretty fun for those that are really interested.
Yeah, and I think that it's a pretty fun game in and of itself, so even if you're not into basketball, it's still fun to play.
Oh, yeah. I'm not into sports at all.
Yeah.
But I played it with you today, and I won, so of course that was better.
Yeah,
but
I thought it was fun.
But it was fun. Then you have, okay, so 2059 we leave the planet. We take as many people with us as we can. Some people won't go because some people have built up a cult that thinks that the abominations are gods. And they're coming into this world, and if they help them come into this world, they'll have positions as like high priest and stuff in their religion and stuff. And so some of them are turning to cultists that just want to stick around and help out.
That's natural for some people. So, yeah.
And there's other people that don't want to leave the earth. And so they're like, we're not going to go because we're going to stay and try to defend the earth.
Yeah.
So they stay, but the majority of them go. Well, I say the majority of the sane ones go.
Yeah.
Right. And so they are traveling through space in these cyclically created spaceships.
Pretty cool.
I have some detail on how it works, but I'm not going to go into that right now. And they travel for who knows how long. They have no idea how long they were in. They estimate possibly as much as 1,000 years in space, but they don't know for sure how long. Nobody kept any real records of it. People were still devastated by the psychic abilities, even though they were developing them pretty well over time. There were still a lot of new people coming in, and the older ones were trying to help them. And so it was more of a come to grips with the new humanity more than keeping a record of what's going on.
Right, yeah.
And so they traveled for a long time in space. And later they think it was about 1,000 years, about a millennium in space.
Wow.
Well, then they came across this area where there was 2 habitable planets in the same solar system. And so they decided that they might stay there. And as they got closer, they saw debris all through space. And we'll just make a long story short there. What happened is they came across a solar system where 2 warring planets existed, but they had wiped each other out completely.
Oh.
So there's nothing left.
They're uninhabited.
They're
habitable, but uninhabited.
They're uninhabited by any intelligent life form because they'd wiped each other out in multiple wars, and the planets were scarred but repairable. And there was spaceship debris and human body frozen in space all over the place,
Wow.
And once they got under the planets, they saw that there was a lot of high technology, more technology than we have, because we're not technology people anymore. We're psychic people. And so we didn't delve into technology as much as we do today.
Right.
So we find these planets, and they're highly evolved technically, but all the records they have are genetically encoded, and we can't get into them. So we can't figure out what happened. And exactly, we know that they probably either fought each other or fought something else. We assume it was each other because there's nothing else there, just these 2 races that were both wiped out. There's no third party thing going on.
Right.
And it looked like a war, like over lots and lots of years, because we've got all this debris everywhere in space. But it wasn't like 2 planets blasted by some big light beam from the Death Star or something, It was literally, the evidence shows pretty well that it was most likely these 2 fought each other to the death.
Right.
If you're LDS, think of the Jaredites.
Yeah. Total annihilation. Actually, right down to the last man.
Yep. So they decide to colonize the planets, and they do. And moving things from one planet to another takes a long time. They can psychically move these ships pretty well. They've gotten used to it, and not too slow either, but still going from one planet to another is a long trip. So they do discover at one point in time they can actually teleport things, including people. But it takes a lot of energy. So in order to do it, you have to have literally like 50 to 100 psychic people, like literally compact into an area, and then together they use their energy to boost something to another planet. So,
wow.
They at first they're thinking teleportation is like it disappears from here and goes here, or goes through some kind of wormhole in there. But it turns out it doesn't. It turns out it literally is just moving things so fast that you're thinking it there, which is literally like almost a split-second movement from here to there. But because it's a psychic process, there's like a barrier around it that protects it from the speed. But it doesn't protect it from other objects in space.
But so moving things at the speed of thought would eliminate distance, right? I mean,
it eliminates time where distance is concerned.
Yeah.
But it doesn't eliminate things that might be between you and the location.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, that's what I mean. That eliminates time, the varied amount of time it might take to travel different distances.
Yeah. But that it's kind of like you can't move something someplace you haven't been, which means the people here have to be able to imagine the place they're sending it to.
Okay,
if they can't imagine it, then it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
They actually can't send it anywhere.
Right, that would make sense, actually.
So it was actually an accidental discovery on that, but then they developed it over time. But the biggest problem they found out is, strangely, when you're moving at the speed of thought, this kind of weird barrier is around you where like small particles are wiped out and don't hurt you. And like you're in space, there's no air, so you don't have to worry about air. And if you're doing it on the planet, then you could have some serious problems because you've got wind, which is a resistance, and it's bigger than small particle. It covers your whole body.
Yeah.
And so there's a minor issue there. But if you're moving from space through space, then it's okay. So their platforms for teleporting are like satellites that are orbiting the planets, and then they just go to another satellite orbiting another planet. Because there's no air in space, so it eliminates that wind issue. Then small particles are wiped out because you're a bigger particle moving at a really, really fast speed, and so small particles are disintegrated. But anything that's, let's say, your size or bigger of whatever is being teleported can interfere with the process. And it turns out pretty devastating because you will just imagine you're teleporting like a pod of people, and there's a broken down piece of spaceship between you and there. You don't know it because it's kind of slowly moved into way. And so it's like, blow, and they're all wiped out, and they're all just almost disintegrate.
Yeah. So, end of that mission.
Yeah, so they realized what they needed to do before they could use this cool ability of teleporting things from planet to planet, is they needed to clean up space. There's way too much debris. So they start cleaning up space, pulling spaceship particles down and pulling them towards one or the other planet. And there's also a lot of dead bodies in space, so they're pulling those dead bodies down. They're frozen in space, so they've been preserved for however long. So they pull them down, and at first they put them in these coffin type things with the plan of burying them and stuff. But they're trying to sort out which one should be buried at what planet, And so while they're doing that, somebody discovers that using psychic abilities and a little bit of technology, you can actually animate these corpses, and you can tap into to a short-term memory and actually have them do small tasks.
Wow.
They can independently do small tasks if you psychically tap into their short-term memory banks. So you can actually animate it. It uses some technology because you have to be able to have the bodies lubricated in a sense to move, because they don't have blood flowing through them.
Yeah.
So they create a fake blood And they don't need it through the whole body. They need enough to just move the joints and stuff. So they have these things that are at first walking around kind of disjointed, like, because they're trying to figure out how to do this. And they can actually tap into short memory for muscle movement type things. And so the things can be given commands to do certain things, and they'll actually carry it out. And then when they're done, they just wait for another command because they don't have their own capacity.
Yeah.
And they developed this over time, and there's actually a game that's been partially developed called the Frankenstein Initiative, based on them actually animating these corpses and putting them to work
to
clean up their own debris.
Who's developing all of this stuff?
Well, some of the more scientific-minded people have discovered this, and they're working on that kind of thing. And so they get these things that are now they're happy because now they got 100 million times the workforce because they got all these dead corpses animated going out and doing these tasks. So they have like 100 of them in a room and say, "Go do this," and they go do it, and then they come back and wait for another command.
Yeah.
I got a bit of a throat. Anyway.
Like the army of dry bones, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy.
So then they discover that you can actually fuse with the corpses using your psychic ability, and once again, some technology. You can actually graft these body parts onto your own body, giving it life again. It is gross. So they can literally attach like another arm under their current arm, and then they, between a little bit of technology and a lot of psychic ability, so they can actually interlace it and actually make a functional arm, make that arm actually usable and alive again, but part of you.
Oh, that's pretty disgusting.
And they want volunteers that are willing to do it because they want access to the technology. Now they can access the technology because they're fused with the other person's DNA.
Wow.
So they want some people to volunteer to do it. And nobody wants to, of course.
I'll say.
But finally they do get some people that are willing to.
Some crazy people.
Yeah, they get maybe 1,000 people or so that are willing to undergo this process and get some body parts fused on with them so they can access this. I think you get the curious people that are more curious about this technology that they haven't been able to access. They've been here now for, I'd say, decades, and they haven't been able to access it and find out what's going on or what these people know. And so the curious people, they're willing to do it because they want to be the ones to discover this stuff. So they get the people to do it, and they do access the technology, and they find a lot of different technical wonders and things. But after maybe about 2 or 3 decades of it, they realize that as wonderful as this technology is, it's actually limited compared to their psychic abilities. It can't do half of what they can do. It's fun and, like trinkets in a sense. It's really fun and pretty and,
It's for children.
Yeah. And they do use some of the drones. They have these really, almost humanoid drones that were really awesome. And they still use some of those periodically. But overall, the psychic ability is way beyond the technical ability of these people.
You would think so.
So the people that chose to graft themselves with this stuff, they're shunned pretty bad. Because now they're useless.
Wow.
And they're stuck with these graft parts on them.
Wow.
And so for a while, they're just like their own little pocket of people, all shunned.
Almost like a leper colony.
Yeah, a leper colony, exactly.
A self-inflicted leper colony.
Yeah.
Ow.
So then somebody gets the idea to use his odd body parts to pose as a piece of art at somebody's party, and it turns out to be a huge thing. And so different people are now posing at parties and as different, living art in a sense. And so more and more people over time want to do it. They want to be living art. So they're fusing with these body parts. And after a while, it gets pretty...
That's like a freak show, like at circus, the old-fashioned freak show.
Yeah. And so people are fusing with these bodies and then they're competing with each other over becoming the best and most exotic, art. And that goes on for generations. And
Yikes.
And it becomes so intense that almost everybody is involved in it, and they actually vote to try to be able to change their children, and they win. So now the children are actually being grafted with body parts even at birth.
Just like they are nowadays.
Yeah.
In real life.
Exactly. So everybody's just fusing all over the place with these weird body parts. And at one point in time, they realize that our DNA isn't really compatible with their DNA. Nobody noticed at first because your own psychic abilities are literally holding these meshed parts together. So it's actually their minds making it work. And it does work because their minds are very powerful, and they do this kind of stuff almost subconsciously after a while. But in all reality, the DNA was not compatible with each other, and so there's actually causing some problems. And it went on for a long time, but now the problem is overpowering our own psychic abilities to just keep it as it is. And some people begin to literally rot, fester where the grafts are at. Well, if you have one or two grafts, then a little festering might not be too bad. But some of these people are totally grafted up. You know, it's like some people have like fingers all over their face, movable fingers, because they're grafted to work. You know, so they like grip. You see these fingers grip. You know, you know, they might even have them over their eyes where they go ooh, peekaboo, you know, stuff like that. So those are all festering with these sores and kind of this kind of rot. And so you've got a classification of people now that are rotten. They're like zombies. They're literally rotting. And then other classifications where their bodies are drying out, where they can't keep the moisture there, and they're drying out and starting to flake and actually fall apart. So you got one people that's kind of rotting in this place goes over in this group because they've got like dandruff, but their whole body is doing it, you know, and so you got these nasty piles of skin.
Disgusting.
And nobody wants to be around them. Nobody wants to be around them because the rot stinks. It's like pus and it stinks. And so you got all these different kinds of abominations now that have broken apart into factions because of the various levels of rot that's going on. Some are faring better than others, but they're still having problems.
Yeah.
So now they need to fix it, and the only way they figure out they can fix it is to find an original human DNA, which doesn't exist anymore because they've changed their people even at birth for so long that people start being born disfigured and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they need to find a way to fix it. So it goes on for a long time. People are literally dying off. Some entire factions of people just dead one day. You go in there, it's just this pile of dead. Some people like almost melt. There's a pile of goo over there. It's got like, 10,000 people in that group that just one day melted.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't manage to keep the thing going, and the DNA's combination just melted their body. So they're desperate. So one of the scientist people discovers that you can use memories in people to look into the past. But they need somebody with a pure line. There's a lot of intermixed lines over the years. So they look for some people, and they find a family called the Mark family. And they're able to follow their line all the way back to the first
progenitor.
Well, 1904, as it happens. They go all the way back to 1904. Now, we're 5,000 years in the future. We're going back to 1904 through this one family's line, which is the Mark family. The other thing we discover in the Mark family is that they were naturally endowed with psychic abilities. So even before the growth of psychic abilities through the abominations, these people are already naturally endowed with psychic abilities. So they thought that was interesting, in the fact that the lines existed strong the whole time. So they get different family members of them, and they have them literally project an image of their past through their eyes. Their eyes are like the window, and they can actually project. And so they're looking through this like a window to the past. And then they discover, they're thinking they could look through this window and maybe find somehow some information that might give them knowledge of a normal human DNA, or some pathway to help them discover it here. Well, while they're doing it, one of the things they see through this window is this little human girl. Well, they're human. They don't look human anymore. They see this little human girl step in front of this window, and she looks at it. She puts her hand forward, and her hand comes through the window to their side, and then she steps through, and she's standing there with her.
Oh, wow.
And she's not scared. You know, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of like a little girl that like in Monsters, Inc., you know, steps through and see this big monster, and she says, hey, kitty.
Yeah.
So she steps through, but the other thing is she's very psychically advanced. You know, she was like, they were holding her on the farm, not letting her go to town, because she was born with such psychic abilities. They were afraid she'd hurt people and not know how to control it. So they were keeping her on the farm. Her uncle, who was also pretty psychically endowed, would come out now and again and try to help her learn how to use it and study it. But he even admitted that she knew it better than him by a long shot. And when he was out there trying to teach her and help her, that she was actually teaching him and helping him more than anything, and that she really did have really good control over it. But the family was just afraid, so they kept her there, which she was fine with that. She liked to wander in the woods and stuff. So when she came through the gate, she had her own psychic abilities, and she could sense that there was no animosity. There wasn't a violent place to be. You know, these people were actually friendly people, if you can call them that. So they discovered through that process that it's not a window they were looking through, but it was a gateway. That certain people could create it into a gateway. Psychically endowed people could actually create it into a gate. So the Mark family, who's naturally psychically endowed, even though they're enhanced through all this whole stuff, because they have the natural ability, it's not a window you're looking through, it's a gate.
Yeah.
And so you can actually step through. So then they started going through. So the first event taking place in 1904 was us going through this gate into the past to try to find evidence of what an actual human DNA is like, so that they could recreate it to fix us in the future.
So the abominations that people start encountering and driving them insane are just future humans looking for a cure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, there was a movie about this once, so that part of it's not an original, just my take on it, the way I do it is original. I'm not sure. I think theirs was more of an atmosphere.
What was the movie called?
I don't remember. I remember I had a little girl and a stuffed bunny, and inside the stuffed bunny was a microchip that was way, way more advanced than anything. It was actually the bunny that was going in the past. And they were hoping that somebody with a certain genetic, it was like a disease in the future was killing people. And so they were trying to find somebody that had a pathogen, a natural pathogen that would cure that disease. But they couldn't go back to the past. So they sent this stuffed bunny with a computer chip inside that would like take pathogens from those people that were hugging it. And then when a certain time passed, it would zip back into the future, the bunny would. And they were hoping that they could eventually get what they needed. And theoretically, the thing had been forward or back in time multiple times. They've been trying and it'd come back and not work, so they do it again. And they were like on their last attempt this time when they finally did get it to work.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that there is a movie out there that was like that. My story was created before that, so I was kind of sad. I actually really liked the movie, but I was a little sad when it came out because I was like, oh no, and that's going to seem like I'm copying that movie. But in all reality, my story was made before that movie.
Yeah.
But
yeah, pretty good. I think we've gone over 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, we've gone over that. I don't even know if this thing's recording still.
Oh wow. Does that red bar mean it's recording?
I guess it is. It's been an hour.